I like the swishy background. Do you know what it reminds me of? Do you remember those screensavers in the late
Yep,
90s?
yep.
It's like,
It's
is it actually that?
it's a little bit of a hark back to that. Yep,
I love it.
a little bit of a deep cut there, or an Easter egg for those with brains like yours, I guess.
Yeah, our kids will never know.
Because it used to be, no, they used to be quite angular from memory. Used to
I
do
thought that
the
they
sort of
could
like,
do, yeah, I thought that you could have a swirly one or an angular one.
you might have been able to.
Mm.
It's been decades since I've had a 90s computer. Christ, dear Lord. I had a few things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm conscious that I don't want to slip into just reliving our past too much. But there's a lot of similarities in our journeys. You're a few years ahead of me now with Chime, but like we've known each other for almost 20 years, Claire. Isn't that a terrifying thought?
It's absolutely terrifying. I don't know how it's happened, really, if I'm honest. 20 years. I'm only 17.
Exactly. Same here. And that's the miracle of time travel, which we both
Yeah.
discovered and haven't shared with anybody else since.
No. So our little secret.
So look, so you are the founder of Chime and have
Mm.
become a sort of mainstay in agency world, doing a lot of speaking stuff, doing your hero moment stuff. There's a whole load of stuff that I'm keen and excited to kind of dive into with you. But I want to just hear a little bit about your journey to Chime and a bit about your kind of marketing philosophy, because I think there's an interesting path and journey that you've shared, and some valuable experience that you sort of brought to, and what sort of precipitated the creation of Chime. So like, what was your first kind of foray into marketing? Like, did you leave uni and go straight into a marketing role, or did you find your way there like I
Well,
did?
so, and I don't know how much you've shared about your past in the background in the previously, but we both went to uni together and we both dropped out of uni early. And I dropped out of uni, kind of mental health reasons, too much partying, not enough direction, and I got a job. I got a job in Loughborough doing admin, worst admin person ever, but it was in a consultancy, and I kind of recognized that they didn't have any marketing support at all. And they used to run events, but not very well. And there was no one really doing marketing in new biz. So I can remember being 20, 21 and going to the owners of the business and saying, look, there's no one doing this. I think I should do it. And here's why. And I kind of pitched myself to them. And I had no marketing experience. I'd been doing a fine art degree. So I
That's
didn't
bold.
know what I was doing
That
at
is
all.
that is
Yeah.
the Everest of optimism. That is. I
I
love that.
know. There is something, isn't there, about like the attitude that you have, like how ballsy you are when you're that age, and then you kind
Yeah.
of lose that somewhere along the way, and imposter syndrome creeps in, which is where us millennials are kind of live in imposter syndrome, I think now.
Mm,
But it's probably because we were so ballsy, or I certainly was when I was younger. And so that's essentially how they backed me, and that's how I fell into marketing. And that was in Loughborough, and I was there for 2 or 3 years, then moved down to London, and bar one job, which was
mhm.
working for the London College of Beauty Therapy as their marketing manager. I've been in consultancies and agencies ever since as a marketing manager or head of marketing, marketing director. And that's kind of where I've learned my craft, really. And
Mm,
I loved it because I got to work in these really creative environments and agencies,
mm.
and I was selling marketing to people that cared about marketing, and I cared about marketing, and I wasn't selling widgets or something, I wasn't selling something that I didn't care
Growth
about.
hacks.
So I got to speak about marketing all day with people that loved marketing too and wanted to procure marketing services. So for me, it was like the best job ever. And at the time when I was first a marketing manager within agencies, I was like, well, what's great about it is I get to work in these creative environments with
Mm.
creative culture, but I don't have to deal with clients. I'd originally thought I'd go in that sort of marketing manager role and then move across into client servicing, and quite quickly was like, oh no, I think I'll stay put and I'll work on the agency brand. And so that's what I did for about 13, 15 years until COVID hit, really. And it was a range of agencies, kind of small boutique independents, all the way up to Publicis Group, big networked agency, which is where I was when COVID hit. And I was on maternity leave with my second daughter in the midst of May 2020, that first lockdown, and I got made redundant. And it was the same month
Ouch.
that my husband got diagnosed with MS. So that was a bit
That's
shit.
brutal. That's really brutal.
Yeah, it
That's so.
was.
I can't believe they made you redundant while being on maternity. Like in some ways, like in one I was like, I can understand. Like I actually no, that's complete bullshit. I just don't understand how they did that. Like how did that land for you for such a large firm to be
Mm.
quite so callous? And I get that they have business objectives, like
Um,
whatever, but that feels really
I was
cruel.
actually, yeah, I think it was a funny time though, wasn't it? It was COVID, and coupled with that, the business had, in fact, the day after I went on maternity leave, I went on maternity leave on a Friday, and on the Monday, a new CEO came into the business, and he brought in a new management team. So I kind of had this inkling, even before COVID hit, that they were going to shake shit up. He was going to change
Mm,
the business. That was his remit by group, was to change the business. So my boss went what before Christmas, before COVID hit. So I kind of could see that it could
mm,
happen. And I'd been there 6, 7 years anyway. So I was actually quite at peace with it. I mean, it's horrible. I've been made redundant twice in my career and it's horrible, but both times much more exciting, better opportunities came out of the back of it. So second time round, that was the second time, I was much more philosophical about being made redundant. And
mm.
because I'd been there a bit longer and because I'd been on maternity leave, I actually came out with like a little bit of money, not a lot, but a
Yeah.
bit. And it kind of gave me the security to trial freelancing. I wouldn't have
Hmm.
had that otherwise. And that's what I did. I came out and I kind of finished off my maternity leave. And in the September of 2020, I started freelancing as a marketing consultant for agencies. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think I'd have ever necessarily done it because I wouldn't have had that kind of body of cash behind me, particularly with two young children to
Yeah.
go and trial it. I'd have always, I think, felt like I had to chase a salary. And actually, at that time, if I hadn't have been made redundant, I would have been kind of forced to stay in a weird way because there weren't jobs then. It was kind of pre-Great Resignation. There weren't a lot
Hmm.
of jobs around. So I would have gone back after my maternity leave and I'd have stayed and I could have easily got stuck there, stuck in a business that I'd
Yeah.
been in for 7 years or so. So it was actually a really great thing. And I guess that's one thing I always try and say to other people who are going through redundancies, of which there are many in agency land at the minute.
Yeah.
Actually, almost always, in my personal experience, and yes, I'm lucky and yes, I'm privileged, but good things usually come out of it. And it pushes
Yeah.
you to do things that you wouldn't have done normally.
Well, so I had similar things. I agree with you on the redundancy point because I think particularly with like we both had two small kids,
Mm,
the absolute necessity to keep cash coming in, you are there's something about that motivation that it brings, and you got a nice payout, I'd imagine, from Publicis, and probably had that, like you said, a little bit of an opportunity to run with
mm,
things. I didn't get anywhere near that. My partner started maternity on the day that I got made redundant from where I was, which was a big slap across the face with a wet fish. And it was just like, right,
mm,
well, now what? And like my old boss, when I was at head of content at an agency called Branch Road, like he used to say to me all the time, you should go freelance. You'd be happier. You'd have more freedom. Like you'd probably earn more money. And it was always like, yeah, of course, Simon. I'm just going to, completely stop everything that I'm doing here and just hope that there's work out there. But when you have to find it, I
yeah.
found, I'm now sort of 18 months in, I'm still peaks and flows of classic freelance lifestyle, but, starting to attract people to me and feel a little bit more secure and confident. But
Mm.
it did take an almighty drop kick off the diving board to
But
to get me into this world.
But there's other beautiful things that come out of it as well. Like you and I reconnected after 15 years of not
Hmm.
being connected because you were made redundant. Like I think you
Yep.
posted on LinkedIn and I saw it and reached out to you and was like, this
Hmm.
was me 2 years ago. And that's rekindled our friendship that in all likelihood never would have happened had you and I both not been made redundant and experienced the same things. Like I saw that you'd been made redundant, saw that you were setting up your own thing, and I was like, I can help you because I've done this too.
Yeah, you were
and
amazing,
then and
actually.
then here we are now.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, and there's a lot of lessons that I learned from you, mostly around connections and dedicating
Mm,
time every week to having conversations with new people, whether they be target clients, that would be the ideal, but just other creatives, other people that are, finding their way on this path or have done it for a lot longer. You either help someone behind you or you learn from those in front of you, but always with that kind of mindset of there's enough work for everybody. You just have to connect people together, and that work will materialize. And I've tried to hold on to that, and I always try to do the connections where I can. Like Chris Bantock, who's a mutual connection of ours and was my first guest on this, like he tracks the number of connections that he does every year, and I think
Yeah.
he was topping over 100 last year when he did his numbers. And like, to get to that level, I need to have the network a size of his, but I'm certainly sort of finding that. So you were doing consultancy,
Mm.
working for yourself, finding work, helping agencies out. How did, or where did the idea for Chime come from? Like, was it a crystallizing moment where you realized I actually can't manage all of this work on my own and I need to expand, or was there something else that kind of just sparked the desire to sort of make it
Yeah.
an agency, I guess?
So, well, there was a few things really. So, I'd scaled it. I'd scaled the freelance business to a point where I couldn't physically take on any more work, and so there was a tipping point in January 2 years ago where I was like, look, I either am going to have to start saying no to work and scaling it back because I also wasn't able to maintain that momentum, like the amount that I was working just me, like it wasn't maintainable long term. And so I was either going to have to scale it back, say no, or scale it up. And I loved the variety. So, bearing in mind,
Mm-hmm.
I've been in agencies my whole career pretty much, but I'd only ever had one client at a time, which was the agency that I worked for. I absolutely loved working with all these different businesses where you do something for a business over here and a completely different agency with completely different needs. It would spark something over there. And I really loved that. But I also missed having a team. And so I
Mm-hmm.
initially started scaling with freelancers and really enjoyed working with other people and it not just being all on me. And I enjoyed kind of delegating and helping other people get more work and being really collaborative. I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But a layer kind of above that, like the more personal layer, that was kind of like the business layer. But personally as well, like I mentioned earlier, my husband was diagnosed with MS in the pandemic, and I just knew that what I wanted to try and build something so that at some point, if he can't work full time anymore or doesn't want to work full time anymore, or he needs to, needs to do something different with his career, he can. So I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
build something that could ultimately support my family if it needed to, because he was and still is the breadwinner. But it was a driver for me. It was like, actually, if I scale an agency and I make it bigger, maybe there's a way that I could support my family and he wouldn't need that pressure on his shoulders should it ever come
Yeah.
to that. So there was kind of, yeah, these two things, very personal and also kind of the business side, I guess, as well, and what I was enjoying.
Yeah, that's a lot to have on your shoulders. And obviously, like he was dealing with MS and like the diagnosis and like trying to come to terms with all of that at the same time with a small family and you growing a business. So what was the sort of strategic approach that you took then? Like I'm sort of in that, like I said, I'm a little bit behind you, and I'm starting to get to that point where I have to make that decision that you did. I either scale
Mm.
back or I look to expand. And I initially thought I would grow an agency, but that freelance model of like associates that you bring in sort of feels the right path for me. Like I don't want that responsibility of people's mortgages and stuff. It's really horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
But that at the moment, like I'm struggling with making sure that we're all okay this side as well. But what was the sort of thinking behind doing that? What steps did you take? What did you put in place? Did you bother with a business plan like my accountant always asks me to do, and I have absolutely refused to up until now?
Well, I was really loving work at that point. And I still do now, but I was really loving it then. And I maybe ran slightly foolhardily into it and just thought, this is a great idea. And actually, with everything that was going on at home and the world at that time, kind of post COVID-y times, actually, the work was like something that was just for me anyway.
Hmm.
So I enjoyed being in it. It felt like it was just for me rather than for the kids or my family or whatever. So there was that. Yeah, after I'd made the decision, I joined some more kind of professional groups to give me some grounding of
Mm.
how to run a business. I got a HR consultant who helped me kind of do all the stuff that you need to do when you start employing people. Because I went very quickly from working with a few freelancers to then employing one of those freelancers who is also a friend, and she's
Yeah.
still in the business now. So yeah, I had a HR consultant help with kind of that side of things, the stuff which I didn't know anything about. And the way I scaled it was bringing in, I brought two people in at the same time, a senior and a junior. They're both still work for Chime now,
Hmm.
and they started part-time on 3 days a week. Yeah, they were both 3 days a week, and then they've kind of scaled their time up over time, and
Hmm.
that allowed, I was just really lucky that they wanted to be part of the journey. They're
Yeah.
amazing. They were happy at that point to be flexible as well. So, and I was lucky, really lucky with how I met them both. So one is kind of a friend anyway, and I'd gone on the journey of being freelance, and I'd been trying to persuade her to leave her corporate job. I was like, it's great, you'll love it, go freelance. And so she did some freelance work for me, and then I managed to claw her slowly out until she
Yeah.
joined Chive properly. And the other one, I overheard a conversation at a client's office where they'd been given a CV for someone by a friend of the MD's, and it wasn't right for them. And I said, oh, chuck me the CV, I'll have a look,
Mm.
because I'm thinking about using freelancers and thinking about maybe I'll get a junior. And I met with her, and Camilla is still in the business as well. And she
Mm.
now, like, it's amazing her journey. She came with like not a lot of marketing experience really. She'd kind of done an internship before, and now she pretty much runs like the data side of our research projects that we do.
Hmm.
She does all of the data analysis and finds the story in data and research. And so yeah, she's like really integral to what we do now, which is great.
Yeah,
I don't know if
we'll
I've
come
answered your
on
question there or just rambled.
both. I think we'll come on to more of that data side of the story, because I think where we're at now today in terms of marketing, in terms of efficiency, in terms of effectiveness, and all the rest of it, like being able to understand data and actually act upon it is so critical. And it's interesting. It's interesting how much work with clients that I do that don't have that data that they should absolutely be basing stuff on.
Mm,
So to have someone in the team who is able to extract it, find it, interpret it, and then put that back together into a sort of compelling narrative is incredible. And to have her as
yeah.
taking her as almost from an internship into now like a full-time employee is amazing. So
Yes.
how long ago did you bring them on?
Two
A couple of years?
years almost to the day. It was end of April 2022. And then we hired one more in the September, I think, of that year. And then another in the December, January. And we actually scaled, we had to scale back so the first year of running the business was incredible. We grew much more than I thought we would. And because of that, we tried to hire kind of ahead of the
Hmm.
curve. And then last year happened. And for anyone that works in or around agencies, you'll know that last year was a really tough year for creative industries.
Mm.
And all of our clients at Chime, they're all agencies. So we do marketing for other agencies. And so yeah, last year was really hard. And actually turnover wise, we did about the same as we did in our first year, but it just meant that our profitability was completely shot, to be honest. And so we ended up
Hmm.
having to make a redundancy in December last year, and are kind of refinding our way with it this year, to be honest. But I think it's a similar story. Like, I'm happy to share that because I know that a lot of agencies have felt that, be
Mm.
that, agencies like yourself where you're working with freelancers and you're, kind of a consultant freelancer plus plus, all the way up to 300 person agencies have felt that. So I know that that's
Mm.
like, it's a common story from last year.
Yeah, I mean the Branch Road, the agency that I was at before. Hopefully they make no secret of it, but I know that I was also picking up the occasional piece of work from them, and that vanished. And I sort
Mm.
of got in touch with the MD there, and she kind of echoed the same points that budgets were being held back, and you're at the end of you're at the end of two budgets. Like you need clients to have budgets to spend on agencies, or agencies to make money to have budgets to spend on you. And I feel like you were
Yeah.
probably the canary in the coal mine for me, because I think I remember speaking to you and you sort of saying, like, sort of nodding your head a little bit, sort of going like, yeah, it's not as good as it was last year. And
Mm.
hiring to meet a need is like totally normal behavior, but then and you there's always a little bit of speculation in that as well. So having to then make a redundancy, it's like it's a natural thing, but it's so horrible. And I don't know,
So
are you
horrible.
still in touch with her? Because I know you were an all female agency,
Mm.
so You
Yeah,
still
yeah. She's got another job, and from what I understand, she's really happy, and it's close to home. So the four out of the five of us then were all based in London,
mm,
and she was based up north. And so this is an agency which is close to home, and she can take her dog to the office and stuff. So I
dreamy.
think she's happy. I'm sure it's best for
That's
all of
good.
us. Like sometimes these things just happen for a reason, right? And but it was
Mm,
really hard, and it was really interesting because it was one of the first. Well, it's the first time I had to do like a proper redundancy with someone, and having been through it twice for me, it was then really, it felt really weird and really hard having to be the person pulling the trigger this
mm,
time. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think no one ever has a good redundancy experience, right? Like,
no,
but
no.
hopefully I was able to handle it with some compassion. I hope.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I hope never has to happen again. Like but I know that they will continue to happen. Like having to get rid of essentially like what becomes a friend, right? When you're working in such
Yeah.
a small group. Yeah, it must have been really difficult. So let's pivot away
Mm.
from that, and let's talk about what you discovered last year. Because I remember us talking about your hero moment stuff, which sort of began with your agency benchmarking report, so sort of practicing what you preach, as it were.
Mm.
So, like, where did the thinking come for that, and like, what was the kind of strategy around the campaign that we worked together on, your first one, your agency
Mm.
benchmarking one, and then what you're doing for clients now?
So backing up slightly, so Chime
Mm,
Agency is a marketing agency for agencies, and we tell our clients all the time that they need to practice what they preach. If you're a web dev agency, you need to have a really shit hot website. If you're,
mhm,
a social media agency, you've got to be all over social media. So whatever it is that you're selling for your clients, you need to become your own best case study. And that's what we tell our clients to do every day, and that's what we sell. So for us, we had to find a way of doing that for ourselves. We couldn't not practice what we preach, and genuinely believe this so much that practice what you preach is one of our values at Chime now, one of the three
mhm,
values, because it's so core to the business and why we set up and how we operate every day. So we knew we needed to find something for us to enable us to practice what we preach. I was also very conscious of the fact that because I was building a business, and I'm really lucky, right? I'm building a business where our clients are also our peers. So
mm,
I'm able to learn from our clients because we work with agencies that are much larger than us, some the same sort of size as us. So I get to learn from those people, and they often become my friends and stuff too. So I was just really conscious of seeing what happens in our clients' businesses and showing that we could overcome the same challenges that they face. So that was really important from the outset. And one of the big reasons why I did it was that we see, and our data, our research, which I'll tell you about, but we see in our research that smaller agencies really over rely on their founder brand, and it's because we're smaller agencies. It's your founder and your leadership team that's going to bring in the business. We win
mhm,
business through word of mouth and referrals, but there comes a point in an agency's life cycle where actually that doesn't cut it anymore. And if you're wanting to scale your agency, if you're wanting to sell your agency at some point, if you're wanting to jump a revenue bracket, or you're wanting to enter a new market, actually your founders network won't be able to maintain the scale that
mhm,
the agency needs. So I was really conscious that I didn't want the agency to just be about me, but for the agency to have something that the agency owned, to build value in the business, for the whole team to be able to get behind, and for us to kind of really run headfirst into the same challenges that our clients face. And that was the main premise, having being our own best case study, practicing what we preach, but having something that was ownable up by the agency and not just by Claire, the
mm,
founder. So we set about what happened was we would do marketing strategies and marketing plans for agencies, and part of that was we developed this scoring matrix when we were doing competitor analyses. So we'd score our client, and then we'd score five of their competitors or
mhm,
aspirational agencies. And I kind of realized, I was like, we've done, I don't know, we've maybe scored about 30, 40 agencies in these, in our strategies and plans over the course of about a year. And I was like, actually, if we were to put a load of agencies through this, we'd have benchmark data, and we'd be able to see the differences in different sorts of agencies, how they're performing in their marketing and what's working and what's not. And so that's what we did. We put 100, that initial year when we worked together, we put 100
mm,
agencies through our competitor analysis, essentially. And then Camilla looked at the data and we found these lovely, amazing stories that
Hmm.
kind of backed up our hypotheses and our anecdotal evidence of what it's like for agencies doing their own marketing. And then we released it to the world. It's, I think, been really useful for agencies. And that was also really important, that whatever we did had to give genuine value to our clients and our
Hmm.
prospects. And it basically allowed us, it gave me a platform to have something to talk about on podcasts,
Hmm.
webinars, on stage, that kind of top of funnel brand awareness. It gave me that. But it also gave me really great things to talk about in sales meetings, in stats in pitch decks. It gave us credibility, and it gave the agency the brand awareness, not just me.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was great.
So
So we've done it
it's
again.
yeah, I know, and we will definitely get onto that because I think what what amazed me, or what like I love about it, is that it's a real stake in the ground and a we own this space thing. That for me is like the what all kind of research, first primary research, does, is it says to the market, like, if you want to know about this thing, we are experts in this thing. And it's that kind of calling card, like you said, that put your agency as opposed to just yourself as the as the sort of barometer and as the source of expertise, which I think is really smart. So now you're in your second year of it. This was last year that you ran the first report. So now you've got benchmark data from last year. You've got comparable data from this year. You can analyze trends. You can spot future developments. Like, in terms of a topic of what you've picked, and the fact that it's your own kind of competitor analysis framework that you're running people through, like, it's just going to be a gift that keeps on giving. So what have you done with what did you do with the data from last year in terms of amplifying that message? Like, what was the kind of strategy around that? And then how is that looking this year? Because obviously you've got another big report, benchmark report, like just spoke about. So like, what has that done for you? And like, what does it look for going forward?
Yeah, so the first year we were very, very, very lean. Like, we didn't have budget. We had like time that we could invest, that I could invest the team's time in doing this, but we really didn't have a lot of budget. So everything was organic last year. We didn't put any paid behind it or anything like that, but we did a research report, which you helped us copyright, Dan, and we that it opened a lot of speaking opportunities for me. So I did about 15 speaking opportunities of some shape or form last year. Every single one of them at some point will have mentioned the research or been all around the research. And it was a real vehicle for us. And it gave me something to talk about that, again, wasn't about me. It was, about the agency. So we did, yeah, a lot of organic socials, email, and speaking ops was the main
Mm-hmm.
sort of channels that we used for it last year, because we just didn't have budget. But
Mm-hmm.
what's interesting is I always knew it was something that I wanted us to build on each year,
Mm-hmm.
every year, do like push it further. And so because it did go down really well, it was really well received by the industry, and it did give us that brand awareness, which we've got
Mm-hmm.
now, and people know of it. Like, I remember about a month after we released it, I walked into a room and someone said, "Oh, I know you. You run that agency that do the research." And I was like,
Yeah.
this is it. That was like the first time that had ever happened. And I was like, that's a sign to me. And it's really hard, isn't it? Like, we know as
Mm-hmm.
marketers, creators, like, measuring brand awareness is almost impossible. But that to me was the moment where I was like, yes, someone I don't know knows who I am because of this research. And I was like,
Mm.
that is the measure for me of success in terms of brand awareness. It's that feeling
Yeah.
that I had. But yeah, so this year we've put 200 agencies through the matrix, so doubled the amount of agencies we've done this year.
Did
We
you do the
re
same 100 as first year?
no, we rescored 60 of
Okay.
the original 100. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why was because the first year we used a big portion of kind of the existing clients and prospects and
Mm.
existing clients and their competitors, because we had quite a big bulk of that data already. This year we wanted to make sure we were much more representative And so we did a lot of work on making sure we split out how we cut the data is by agency size in different size
Hmm.
brackets and agency specialisms. So we wanted to make sure we had representative samples across each of those. So there will be about 3 to 4 agencies which are under five, 5 to 15 people, 15 to 30 people, 30 people to 100 people, and 100 people over in every agency specialism. So we were a bit more robust in our methodology this
Yep.
year, which is why we didn't redo all of them. But there is some interesting data about those 60 that we rescored, in that
Hmm.
of those 60 we rescored, 60% of them dropped their marketing score dropped this year on last year, and it dropped by about 12% on average. So that is like a nice little tasty little nugget of some of the data. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we did 200 of them, and we actually did 50 of those 200 were US agencies. So we're starting
Okay.
to build a picture of similarities and differences between the UK and the US. And then this year we've done the report again, but we also did a big launch event, and we
Hmm.
couldn't really have done an event last year because we didn't have as much of the network, we didn't have the awareness, we didn't have the money, and we've kind of got those things down because we had the awareness. I was able to
Yeah.
get a sponsor to be able to support the sponsors and partners to be able to support the research and the kind of kickoff event. And
Hmm.
we had about 100 people, 100 agencies in a room 2 weeks ago where we launched it. And so we're literally in the very early stages of launching the second
Mm.
year's research now.
I mean, that's an incredible success story, right? A, someone recognizing you from your picture in a report, and B, like, just being able to get to a point where costs can be covered and you can amplify and share and start to kind of leverage your brand, your partner's brands, and sort of get yourself in front of an increasing audience. And that room was also like then packed with your target clients, which is dream. It's like this the perfect sort
Yeah.
of, in terms of a Venn diagram, those two circles are overlapping, right? Which is exactly what you want. So what does I know it's only been a couple of weeks and you probably don't want to share all of the information, but how is it tracking versus last year's numbers? How is it doing in terms of, obviously, like pipeline generation? You don't have to share anything if you don't want to, but I'm intrigued as to sort of see like whether actually, as well as bringing more of your target clients into a room, attracting more attention, getting more
Mm.
coverage, bringing partners in, like, are you starting to feel the repercussions of persisting and sticking true to for following up the research, that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been 2 weeks since we launched it, of which I was away for 12 days because it was the Easter holidays. And actually,
Well
there's still a
timed.
lot of people that are still away on Easter holidays. So I don't like I had never thought that we would see anything really until beginning of next week, when kind of Easter holidays are done and dusted, just because of where things landed. So we are having good conversations already. There are 3 proposals out now, which are as a result of the event. In terms of last year's kind of ROI, we covered all costs, and that's people costs and any out costs that we had within a month of launch, because we won one project which covered everything. So it wiped its face within a month. But actually, what it gave us, we actually got about 300% ROI on
Mm.
it. And the nice thing about these projects is that because it fuels all of our marketing for the whole
Hmm.
year, really, like from our socials through to speaking ups to everything, you can measure ROI on it, because I don't really care whether it's this podcast that someone's heard about it, someone else's event. It doesn't really matter to me. It all ladders back to that one
Hmm.
investment in the research. So yeah, we're better able to measure ROI when we don't have lots of the tools that like big end clients have. We don't have the
Mm.
data, to your point. We don't have a lot of that. We're not as sophisticated because we're such a small business, but it makes it
Hmm.
much easier for us to be able to attribute ROI. So there's that bit. And then what was the other part of your question? Does that answer the
Well,
question?
it does answer the question. It was, I guess the question was like around showing the value in persistence, because like you said, like the first one wiped its face really quickly, and in the end, you did
Mm,
get the 300% ROI back on like the investment that you made, which is obviously a really good return.
mm,
I was just interested because obviously there was more time, more research, like the
mm.
cost of the project
Yeah.
probably just started to expand a bit as well. And I wondered whether actually the like whether those two lines of expect, whether it's exponential, whether it's just just a steady thing, and whether that really matters to you versus trying to measure the intangible of like real brand salience
Yeah,
and
I think, yeah, it's hard. I think time will tell. It's still too early to tell,
mm,
to be honest with you. However, the feeling in that room at our launch event, like absolutely career highlight for me. I've
mm,
never felt anything like it. And it was actually the kind of days afterwards as well, where people were talking about it on LinkedIn. And I had people that weren't at the event, like friends of mine that aren't even in our industry, messaging me like, I think you've gone LinkedIn famous.
yeah.
And it was for about 10 hours on one day. And it felt like that. It felt like, oh my God, it's actually doing what I hoped it
Hmm.
would do. And yeah, and it's that coming down to that feeling and the feeling that I have of how the event went and how it's been received and how, what people have been saying about the research online and to my face. That feeling is very much there that persistence has won out. But whether
Mm.
it does financially, we'll see. I think, yeah, given the feeling, I would be very surprised if it doesn't.
So what are you doing to perpetuate that feeling from a sort of tactical execution? Like you said, like the good thing about research is you've got a wealth of stats and narratives to fuel a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm interested what you've got planned and whether you want to share all of it with me right
Yeah,
now.
well, there's a ton of content, right? So we've got the report, which is a 98 page report. So that's pretty meaty and juicy, but we're
Mm,
carving that up in so many different ways. So there's going to be video, we've got we've got an interview with the top scoring agency, interviews with our speakers, and that content literally will fuel everything for the next
mm,
year. All of our organic channels will be fueled by that. And hopefully, therefore, we're going to kind of continue adding value to our prospects
mm,
and our clients, which is ultimately the whole point. And then more speaking ops for me, like I'm actively looking for those.
mm,
We Part of the reason why we scored 50 US agencies this year is because I would like us to have the opportunity to move out into the US and start working with more US agencies, particularly those in New York. So that will be a focus for us, is taking like the US focused stories from the data and taking that out to the US kind of enables
Is
us
that
to do
just
that.
Claire? Is that just a
Mm.
purely selfish thing that you want speaking opportunities in New York? Are you
Ah,
is that what's happened here?
no, do you know what? There's such a big job for agencies to do in America. What the interesting thing from the data, right, is that the US agencies we scored, now it was 50 agencies, so it's a really small sample. It's a very big country. That's a tiny sample, really. But they massively bring down the overall benchmark, like the average benchmark this year. I think it's something like of 70% of US agencies fall below benchmark, whereas only 35% of UK agencies fall below benchmark this year. So they're dragging it down. So to me, that's just like huge opportunity in the States. And it's for a number of reasons. And there's actually, again, this thing of trying to live out the challenges that our clients face. There's a massive opportunity for UK agencies to scale
Mm,
into the US because of the exchange rate. It means that we're cheap at the minute. We've generally got slightly more superior client servicing. So US clients like working with us, but
hmm.
also specialist UK agencies can operate really well as an extension to larger full service US agencies that don't have specialisms. They just don't really have the same niching and specialisms always that we do. So yeah, kind of wanting to try and replicate the challenges, I guess, of
Mm,
entering a new market, and that's because they're the sorts of challenges that clients come to us with. So we're just trying to live it ourselves.
yeah, it's interesting you call out the differences. So I listened to a few of the classic marketing podcasts. So Gasp with Giles Andrews and the Uncensored CMO, and they with System One, and they had a review of Super Bowl advertising versus Christmas advertising in the UK. And I know that advertising is not necessarily indicative of the same kind of marketing that we kind of specialize in. I don't think you've done sort of TV adverts and what have you, but like across pretty much every metric, like UK Christmas adverts outperformed US Super Bowl
Mm,
adverts, and they were talking about effectiveness of UK agency production just being that much higher in terms of quality and execution. So it's interesting that the research
yeah.
you're doing on that are slightly more less sort of massive amphitheatre at a Super
Yeah,
Bowl, but in that kind of grassroots and in the B2B space, that actually that's sort of bearing fruit and coming to fruition as well.
yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely. There's definitely opportunity there for UK agencies, but there is therefore for us and my business as well to help US agencies too.
hmm. So what is that? Is that the kind of final picture for you this year? Then that's the big goal is. I wonder whether you're specifically targeting US agencies, maybe with advertising spend or content. Are you publishing later in the day to be more specifically targeted to US audiences? Like, I'm intrigued
Yeah,
to
we've
sort of
got
understand.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got US specific content
Hmm,
that's not in the main report. Like it talks about the differences between UK and US, and UK and US agencies can read that report and get something from it. But there's more kind of content to come that's much more tailored and focused on the US market and their specific needs and
hmm,
challenges. We will we will definitely do kind of email nurture campaign initially. Again, totally honest, from a cost perspective for us, we're still a really small agency. We've
yeah,
not
it's the
got a ton
cheapest.
of resources. So we'll start on email. And as we can, and as we hone what that offer is, we'll then build out paid as well. And what we'll do when we go into the US is have a much more streamlined focus offer rather than doing kind of a bit of everything that we do in the UK. We'll kick off with one service
One thing.
line. This is what you buy from us, and be really, really direct and test and learn, see how it goes. Because that's
Mm.
what marketing is, right? We don't have
Yeah.
all the answers all the time. So we'll test, we'll learn, we'll hone, and we'll do that kind of, yeah, with email initially and then move to paid. And maybe get out there for a speaking up.
Well, yeah. I mean, it would be foolish not to go to New York and speak somewhere. Claire,
We've
thank you
worked
so
with
much for thank you so much for coming on and sort of sharing that. Where can people find you? Where can people access the research? I'll make sure to put links and stuff in show notes, but just for prosperity,
Yeah,
make sure you
so
do it.
we're at chime.agency, and you can get to the research at chime.agency/benchmark-report.
There you go. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Claire. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Bye.